Believe we have a quorum, Jeanette.
Yes.
So I will call the meeting to order. And Jeanette, if you'll take the roll call, please.
Yes. Mayor Jurasek,
Here.
Joe Nunzio,
Here.
Dr. Cooper,
Yes.
Evan Summers,
Here.
Dennis Ryan,
Here.
Ryan Gazer,
Here.
Superintendent Cassell,
Yes, here.
and Aaron Frame.
Here. Good morning.
And Karen will not be joining us today. Okay, the first thing we need to do is approve the minutes of September 28th Executive Committee. Is there a motion to do so?
I'll move so.
Thank you, Dennis. Is there a second?
Second, I'll second. Joe Nunzio.
Okay, Joe, thank you. Are there any additions or corrections? Okay, hearing none. Jeanette, please take the roll call vote.
Mayor Jurasek,
Yes.
Joseph Annunzio,
Yes.
Dr. Cooper,
Yes.
Evan Summers,
Yes.
Dennis Ryan,
Yes.
Ryan Gazer,
Yes.
Superintendent Cassell,
Yes,
and Aaron Frame.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll go on. Item 3 on the agenda is the 9C 27C outreach. How are we doing on that, team?
Jeanette, would you like to go first and then I can have Ryan chime in?
Yes, we've been advertising it on our website, sending out e-newsletters. We've had questions from a couple of members from ONCC as well as from the public. I always refer them back to the frequently asked questions as well as the FAA video. That seems to help a lot. We did get a reporter, Marnie Pike, did have some questions which I referred to CDA. Aaron, I'm not sure if you followed up with her.
I got that request, Jeanette, through Karen Pride. And so I helped Karen with the answer so she could get it back to Marnie. As far as I know, that was all fine.
Yeah, it was a
and
front
Mayor-
page article in the Daily Herald today. And Marnie did get a quote from me and Evan. Evan, I thought your remark was very good. And it seemed like a pretty fair and balanced article.
That was a little
Great.
rough. Came off a little rough, I think. But sorry, Aaron. I like you guys.
Evan, you're not exactly the smoothest guy I ever met.
You know, even though I am. I haven't been a.
Oh, he's smooth. He's just blunt.
You know what? I read it just fine. It basically, and I should have thought about it when I answered, you know, but it basically, you said they added a north runway to take some of the pressure off the south runways. And that's accurate. So coming from Bensonville, I thought it was appropriate.
I keep my residents happy.
Yep.
Mayor, I'll just add on. Ryan Anderson, can you jump in and describe the outreach we've been doing within Chicago?
Sure. We have had briefings with multiple aldermen, Ward 41, 40, 38, and 39. And also we did do a community event. The commissioner and I were invited to participate in a community ward briefing last Monday night on the new runway and what the expected operations might be. And I think it went pretty well. We had a lot of participants. I think there were maybe 50 participants on the call, and we had a lot of good questions. So the last couple of weeks we've been active, at least in the wards, that those have requested for us to come and give them briefings.
Ryan, was your ward event Ward 39, did you say?
Yes.
Alderman Nugent?
Yes.
Okay. And Jeanette, if I recall, Peter Bielek also participated in that. It was Ryan and Commissioner Ree and Peter Bielek, and Alderman Nugent was hosting.
Correct.
So that's good. Ryan, do you have any Chicago aldermen left to brief on the north side?
Not scheduled, no. We had our last scheduled briefing this morning with Ward 40, Alderman Vasquez.
Okay, great. So Mayor, I think we're in decent shape.
Good, good. I appreciate all the effort that everybody's put into it. And I know Marnie appreciated the FAA video, Marnie Pike from the Herald. So while it was long and complex, it apparently is helping to answer questions for folks. So great. Okay, if we have nothing else to add to that, let's move on to the IGA renewal update. I know the team sent a red line out and I was carbon copied on it. I made a few little comments there. Aaron, you responded that you thought they were decent comments, but I'll turn this over to Evan. Would that be you since Karen's not here?
Yes, Karen is heading it up, but I'm her trusty partner on this one. We've gone through, I think we are wrapping up the IGA portion of it. Aaron, are we still on timeline for your approval?
Yeah, the goal is to introduce it in city council this month. And then they'll likely vote on it in December, which is just fine. That gives all the IGA as written now will give all of you to the end of January to counter execute it. Because we know with the holidays and the virtual meetings, timing has to be extended a bit. So as far as I'm concerned, we're on track. We've got a couple cleanup edits to do this week, but I'm feeling really happy about the work that all of you have done over the past 6 months, and I'm happy with the progress where we are today. Evan, you had a question for me, and I'll give you a call back later today.
Okay, yeah, that was just a pie in the sky one. I just want to compliment the City of Chicago Legal Department. They've been super helpful and walking us laymen through the whole process. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Mayor, so when it's ready, once the ordinance is approved by Chicago, I'll work with Jeanette. We'll be sending out 3 originals to all of you. The city is requesting 2 originals and we'll do 1 or more for each of the members. So we're gonna ask for a minimum of 3 original IGAs signed by the members. We'll keep 2 and send 1 back to you. If any member wants more than 1 original, we're happy to do that. Just coordinate that with Jeanette. So the minimum would be 3 originals. If somebody wants 4 or 5 originals, we can do that too.
Okay, that sounds good. I think the only comments I had were more housekeeping kind of things, and Aaron, I'm sure you'll go through those with the attorneys. The one open question I had is whether the Cook and DuPage County representatives represent the entire counties or only the unincorporated. As it's written, it's only the unincorporated, which is my understanding, so that everybody is represented essentially by one governmental entity other than a school district. And is that the wish of the group, or was that something that still needs to be cleaned up?
Mayor, I'll go first, and Jeanette and Evan, feel free to jump in. After thorough debate, it was decided that we should leave the county reps as the unincorporated areas because all incorporated areas, the villages, assuming they're within the TRACON boundary, are eligible to join the ONCC. So in providing a county rep for those unincorporated areas, we wanted to make sure that every resident has the opportunity for representation on the ONCC. So to answer your question, yes, it's my understanding that we left it as the county reps represent the unincorporated areas so as not to double count.
I will follow up. I mean, that was the compromise, and we'll go along with it. I think, Mayor, you said it best when you said this isn't the hill I'm going to die on, and I'm the same way. Yeah. But there is the situation that some people can still be disenfranchised in this process, and I would use Elk Grove Village for an example. They are not a member of ONCC, and they are incorporated, so therefore they would not be represented.
But they're not a member by choice. So if they, they're members of the Suburban O'Hare Commission, which has been serving in an advisory capacity to us, but Elk Grove Village is not a member by choice.
Correct. The choice of the administration. I don't know if that's representative of all people.
Whatever. It's an intergovernmental agreement for governmental entities. So their governmental entity has chosen not to follow this route and believes that their interests are represented by SAC. And to the extent they've brought something to our discussion, we've allowed them to participate. But yeah, so I think it's reasonable here, 1 person, 1 vote essentially, and 1 school district taxpayer and 1 vote as well. So I think we're adequately covered. I appreciate the compromise.
Mayor, so we'll do some final cleanup and send out that final red line to Jeanette, just so that she has it on file. And in the meantime, we'll just go ahead and finalize it and get it in the queue for Chicago City Council.
Great. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the IGA? Again, if you're not going to wave frantically in front of your camera, use the chat feature, and I don't see anyone doing that. Okay, let's move on then to item 5, which is the interim fly quiet report.
Ryan, do you want to go ahead? I don't think we have a lot to report today, but we might have a couple things.
So we, again, are continuing the IFQ through the end of January. We reported last week at the Fly Quiet Committee on weeks 29 through 33, I believe. Operations continue to be impacted in some weeks by some minor constructions as well as flight checks, but we're reporting on those on all our weekly reports. The weekly reports are available on the city's website by the end of business. So far, we've been able to hit that deadline by the end of business every Friday the following week.
Very good. Any questions?
Jeanette,
Okay.
is there anything else that we needed to report today on IFQ?
No.
Okay.
All right, let's move on then to the Fly Quiet Committee update, and I think we'll probably spend the majority of this meeting talking about that. Joe, I'm going to ask you to kick off the discussion, but I also want to recognize that I was on that call for a little while. I did have to jump off about halfway through, but I did note that there was some concern that there were some decisions that were somewhat hurried with respect to eliminating some options and the introduction of a scenario H, which came apparently after the self-imposed due date on that. And I know Bob Dwyer, who's an advisory member of that group, has raised those concerns. So Bob, I want to take care of your concerns during this discussion as well. I'm not Bob, Dan. I keep saying I used to work with a Bob Dwyer. But Dan will take care of your concerns and you'll be allowed to participate in this portion of the discussion. But let's start off with Joe, with your synopsis of what went on and your take on the concerns.
Okay, I'll be as brief as possible with this. Fly Quiet Committee meeting was on October 27th. Call to order was at 9:30. We had a few topics that we discussed. First was the interim Fly Quiet report, went through that. And then we went through the Fly Quiet 21 process again, just to let everybody know how much work we still have to do, where we're at and how much work still has to be done. And then we went through all the alternatives, and that was a very long discussion. The entire meeting took about 2 hours. And so it wasn't just a brief discussion. Everybody asked questions about all the different alternatives. F, G, and H were also discussed. And after a rather lengthy discussion, one of the members made a motion to eliminate F, G, and H. It's just that simple. It was seconded and it was approved by the majority of the members. That's basically what happened. Then it was decided that the next meeting would be December 8th at 9:30, the next Fly Quiet meeting. That's it in a nutshell. That's what we did. But I got to tell you, nobody was being flip about anything. Everybody took all the alternatives seriously, and also recognized that at some point we're going to have to start eliminating things in order to accomplish something. And that's my report.
Yeah, that was my impression for the amount of time I was on there is people were not voting against that motion to eliminate those because they were necessarily in favor of the alternatives, but that they felt a little rushed in the need to analyze them. Now, the meeting I had to jump off a little bit after that, but the meeting apparently went on for quite a length of time after that. So there was sufficient discussion. And I know that you had imposed a deadline, Joe, for submission of alternatives from participants. And we did have an alternative submitted that came in after that date, which apparently gained quite a bit of traction. And I guess there's some concern by the fair representative that this is being inappropriately considered. On the other hand, this is not a cast in stone constitutional deadline. I think what you're trying to do is control the discussion and move it forward, not control it in a nefarious way, but to make sure that we're making constant progress. And a 2-hour meeting would tell me that there was quite a bit of discussion on it. So Evan, if I could get your take on this, because I know you were a participant in there, and then Dan, I'll get your take on it.
I'd also like procedurally what could be done at the Fly Quiet Committee. And I'll stick my neck out with this one, but procedurally this can be done. Evan, you can continue though.
So I think that we followed a democratic process that was followed through. That should stand. I know of no issues. If Mr. Dwyer wants to bring those up, then I invite him to bring those up and we can discuss them.
Okay. So
Now,
Dan, what's your take on this right now?
So certainly from perspective during the meeting, and I think Aaron articulated this as well as anyone, as far as the introduction of new materials, we had alternatives B, C, D, and E that were presented at prior meetings and were not up for a vote for elimination at the same meeting. There was time to ask questions, have follow-ups, and suggest modifications to. So it was really the exception in this meeting that was not granted the other alternatives. And I believe Aaron actually cautioned the committee twice against proceeding down this path for that very reason, which we completely agree with. And then building from there in the issue of the submission past the deadline, you know, as far as I know, everyone else met that deadline, and that an alternative was introduced almost 2 weeks afterwards, we don't think was appropriate. But perhaps even more so telling is that recommendation was also coupled with suggestions on edits to the existing configurations. In this case, I believe it was B and C. And that's another example where no one on the committee was granted that same privilege for the newly introduced ones. And where the optics on this, I think, are really bad is not only is there appear to be a second set of rules depending on who submits it, but I was certainly concerned reading the SOC proposal and recommendations that H wasn't even one they were in favor of, and yet that was the one that carried through. And in fact, what we ended up with were only the alternatives that SOC supports. And part of that was through a late introduction to the process. So we'd really like to understand more about this process and whether everyone's being treated the same.
Okay, now let me step in and say a few things, and I'll keep my cool here. First of all, it's totally inappropriate that you're bringing it up at this point. The appropriate way to do this is to ask one of the members to request a motion to reconsider. That's what you should have done. And then there would have been a discussion as to whether we wanted to reconsider bringing F, G, and H back again or not. And then it would have been within the democratic process and another discussion as to what the committee wanted to do. That would have been an appropriate way to do it. And I would have told you that if you would have asked me. So you can continue now.
Okay, well, first problem is we can't make a motion. And in fact, Alderman Dunn.
I said a member. You
Right.
must be a member. Get them to do it.
My recollection, though, is Alderman Dunn did make a motion to establish some criteria for this decision-making process, and that was never returned to the discussion. So there was an attempt, and it wasn't followed through on.
Bring it up at the next meeting. Have them bring it up at the next meeting. We'll have a motion to reconsider, and we'll take it from there.
So, Madam Chairwoman, I can't speak for the other people that voted in favor of removing those alternatives, but for the sake of the FAA process of having to go through and write the narrative, I don't have any objections to spending a meeting talking about Dan's proposal, because clearly he's got some pride in authorship on that. And if we need to talk about it as a group, so be it. What I'm concerned is happening is we keep breaking down into analysis paralysis and beating these things. And I was just trying to move things forward. It was not nefarious. And, Dan, in your letter, you're saying, you're gravely concerned that I'm talking to members outside of the meeting. Chairman Annunzio has been encouraging us to speak to other members and call them since the beginning of this process. And so, yes, when agendas do come out, I make individual calls to people. That's how this works. That's how politics works. So that was completely unbiased. But if you're going to try to jam this whole process up, sure, let's talk about your proposal. I'm fine with that. I can't speak for anyone else, though.
And I fear.
So again, Dan, the appropriate way to do this is at the next meeting, have Alderman Nunn make a motion to reconsider, and then we'll vote on that. And then
Just to be clear, this has nothing to do with pride and authorship. This is just fundamental fairness in the process, in that we're observing the same.
Not getting your way doesn't necessarily mean a lack of fundamental process. Just remember that when you're talking about democracy. Okay?
It, again, has nothing about getting your way. It's about, do you apply the same rules to all these submissions? And in this case, we don't feel that happened.
And we're giving you an opportunity to have the committee re-examine.
You know what, Dan, I'll carry your motion for you. Does that will that satisfy you? If I'll carry the motion to reconsider?
It presented in that fashion, Evan, I'm not sure.
Well, look, Dan, again, be careful what you're going to die on your sword for. There is a parliamentary procedure to reconsider. As a matter of fact, my board is probably going to have to do that this week on another topic. It doesn't matter who makes the motion and who seconds the motion to reconsider here. It does need to be someone from the prevailing side of the vote. So it does need to be one of the 6 who voted yes. It can't be one of the ones who voted no. And so Evan has graciously said he can make the motion to reconsider, and you can bring those items up. And I think we need to just not worry so much about analysis paralysis here and move us forward. We've heard Aaron say time and time again, they don't have the resources to continuously analyze a huge list of alternatives, and they need to be narrowed down. And we have parliamentary ways in which to do it. I also don't want to stifle initiative. Again, there's nothing in our bylaws that set that cutoff date or anything else. And we don't want to stifle initiative, but we also want everybody to make sure their ideas are being thoroughly and fairly and in an unbiased way considered. So I think the way to do it, as Joe suggested, and as Evan offered to do, would be to have a motion to reconsider and to then have a discussion at the next meeting, so then everyone can voice their opinion on it.
Okay, and that's the way we'll proceed. I thank you for hearing us out and addressing our concerns.
Well, I appreciate it. And, I appreciate Joe's familiarity as a former village attorney on parliamentary rules. And we do have this to fall back on to make sure we move the discussion along. And hopefully that will carry us through, and we'll see what happens at the next meeting.
Perhaps in my zealousness to get something accomplished, maybe I was a bit overzealous. We'll see. We'll see. Okay.
Okay, Aaron, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point in time from the city's perspective?
No, I think I'm good. I can check offline with Jeanette regarding when proposals were received and just report back. Those proposals likely were received by Jeanette, so we can coordinate with her and just verify, when things were received and when they were put in the queue.
Okay, and again, this is not like a procurement bidding process where there's strict rules and strict deadlines, nor like election rules where there's strict deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. We're trying to follow fair and parliamentary procedure here. So we have an avenue to move forward at the next meeting, and thanks to everybody who's gonna help implement that.
Yeah, Mayor, the only other thing I would offer is if D, E, F, and G are out of consideration, and it remains to be seen if that's the case, that means that B, C, and H are still under consideration. I apologize if there's any confusion with the committee members. It was our intent, as Ryan described in the meeting, we did get edits on alternatives B and C, but because that wasn't the assignment per se, we have saved back those edits and wanted to see if those alternatives moved forward. Since they appear to be moving forward, I think I would propose that, you know, I can run this by Jeanette and Joe and Karen. We believe that edits could be presented to the committee. And if we did that, for example, the alternatives that are for the committee's consideration currently are alternatives B and C. If we had an edited version, I would likely call them B1, C1, just so that the committee members are very clear what's the original version and what's the edited version in the interest of transparency. But again, we will ask Joe and Karen and Jeanette if that's how they want to proceed.
Okay. All right, thanks everybody. And let's move on. I'm flipping between documents here on my on my iPad. What's next on the agenda?
There's the agenda for Friday.
Okay, the agenda for Friday. Okay. So we do have United Airlines on this agenda as a speaker. Jeanette, have they been confirmed?
I am in the process of confirming who is speaking and what their title is. I believe they're talking about the effects of the pandemic on their operations.
Okay, I think that'll be important for us all to hear. I know that as a mayor, I've had to get warn letters from them about the layoffs that they've been implementing. I'm sure others of our members have received those same letters. And it'll be important to us on a number of fronts to hear what they're proposing to do. So hopefully they're there. And then it looks like we're just going to go through the rest of the usual topics, including the intergovernmental agreement and the runway commissioning, the ad hoc nominating committee.
We need volunteers.
Right. We'll make sure that we have somebody in place there. And the nominating committee should be aware of the proposed changes to the IGA as well when they're in the midst of their discussion. So there's kind of an interrelated discussion there. And then we'll go through the standing committees and executive director and finish up. So looks like United will be our outside speaker. And then I'm sure that the Fly Quiet discussion, as well as the IGA renewal discussion, will be the important contemporary topics for us to cover. Are there any suggestions to amend this agenda? If there aren't, I'd accept a motion to approve this agenda for Friday.
I'll move so.
Second.
Thank you, Dennis and Ray. And Jeanette, if you call the vote, please.
Mayor Jurasek,
Yes.
Joe Nunzio,
Yes.
Dr. Cooper,
Yes.
Evan Summers,
Yes.
Dennis Ryan,
Yes.
Brian Gazer,
Yes.
Superintendent Cassell,
Yes.
and Aaron Frame.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. What's next on today's agenda?
It is comments from the audience.
Okay, I think Suzanne Carbone had a comment. Hopefully we took care of it in the prior discussion. But Suzanne, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just like to comment. I was an attendee at the October 27th meeting, and my recollection and opinion is that it didn't quite happen like it is being described today. I kind of feel like there's a circling of the wagons, and it was commented that Mr. Dunn tried to bring something forward, and at one point Dan tried to speak up and was very much shut down. And Mr. Summers, I was offended. Mr. Summers at one point called Dan a liar, for trying to bring some facts into it. So I don't think that the meeting was as kumbaya. We're all in alignment as it's being portrayed today, and the fact that we can have rules and guidelines and we can continue to change them when it's convenient for some, but not for others, I find very disturbing. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully this motion to reconsider that will be done at the next meeting will help to clear the air with additional discussion. I think people are getting nervous. It's the end of the year. We need to have something to the FAA in relatively short order, and perhaps a little bit of that nervousness about some of those kinds of deadlines and need to move forward perhaps colored the conversation. But I think we should clear the air and just recognize we're all working to make sure we've got full consideration. And as I've said from day one, this committee requires people to do homework, and we'll make sure if you're uncomfortable that you feel you haven't had enough time to do the homework, let's make sure we follow the parliamentary procedure to allow that all to get done without slowing the process down. So looking forward to future movement and future meetings.
And again, I would say that all citizens and residents that we speak up for, we very much want this process to be finished, as do all of you. And we've been part of this process for years. I have for many years, like everyone. I'm most certainly not an aviation expert, but I've gone above and beyond and have learned an enormous amount, because this information and the nuances, that's what's important. And I was very dismayed hearing many members saying they didn't want to go into details because they were too hard and they might not be able to explain it to residents. And as a resident, I would say they need to get the best program for the residents, and the nuance is up to them to understand. And when we get a program that works, we'll be able to articulate that to the members, saying, you're going to have noise one week, you're not going to have noise one week. It's as simple as that. And I was just very dismayed that the people that are making the choice for a large group of people for perpetuity seem to have checked out. But I thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I like your hair, Mary Theresa.
Could I just say something? And let me just say one more thing about the committee itself. The committee has now spent 3 years and 2 hours talking about these things, and sometimes people get impatient, but procedures allow to be modified over time so that we can continue discussion. That's all I need. That's all I wanted to say.
So again, I appreciate that there's procedures when it's appropriate, but suddenly, like, there's a procedure except when we want to change a deadline. There's a procedure except when that didn't follow. Or so
No,
that's
here's how this works, and it's something that's very hard for people to understand. People on the committee need to understand this. The procedural aspects, the Robert's Rules aspects of a meeting are as important as the substantive part of the meeting itself, so that you know how to navigate the meeting. And so it's up to the members to understand that. And so that the rules don't change. What happens over time is that if you don't know the rules and somebody tells you a rule, you might think the rules are being modified, but in fact, the rules have always been there, except maybe a member or two didn't understand the rule or didn't know it existed. That's what parliamentarians are for, by the way.
Sure. Can you explain to me how deadlines work with parliamentary? Can't even speak. I've not
That
had-
was my deadline was an arbitrary decision to make the thing move. It wasn't going to be done in September. Maybe it would have been, maybe not, but I just wanted to focus the group to let them know that at some point we're going to have to end this discussion and start making decisions. That was not that December date that I gave was a direction. It wasn't a mandate.
I understand the December direction, but at the public ONCC meeting, you and Mr. Summers specifically asked for clarification. When is this deadline? And you spoke, it's October 1st for the submittals. And
That wasn't,
You know what, we could go back and forth on this for an
Yeah.
hour.
okay,
I think it was a administrative arbitrary decision by Joe, and there are parliamentary methods to modify that October 1st. And so what we're suggesting here is let's use those parliamentary methods at the next meeting. Let's make sure everything gets full consideration. We don't want to shut down creativity because we're slaves to arbitrary dates. But we also don't want this to run amok because we're not controlling the movement of the thought process. So let's not get hung up on that. Let's move forward, and let's make sure that if you're not a voting member, that you do have a conversation with a voting member who perhaps can move your idea forward or make a motion, as Evan has volunteered to do on his motion to reconsider. And just keep in mind the parliamentary rules. If it's to reconsider something that a vote has been taken on, a member of the prevailing side of the vote has to make the motion to reconsider. So it can't be a sore loser. And I use those words very loosely. There are no sore losers in this group, but it needs to be somebody on the prevailing side. So we have a path forward, and let's follow it forward. Suzanne, I appreciate your due diligence over the years. You have been a joy to work with, very reasonable, very intelligent, very thorough person. And I thank you for participating. Dan, you as well, and everybody here on this executive committee and Black Quiet as well.
And I thank you very kindly for the kind words. I absolutely agree that, you know, the voting member and our representative should speak with. I've tried multiple times over the years to reach out to Mr. Bialik, and it's been very hard. So the frustration for me as a member of the 39th Ward, and I know we had that meeting that I got a late notification about, but I have tried over the years to speak to my representative to get his thoughts on things, and I have been unable to get, they even have a conversation. So that's a frustration, and that's why many people feel they're not represented because I've been told from others in other wards and other areas that they don't have that same kind of opportunity to have the conversation with the individuals that vote. So I appreciate that we're going to move forward on that, but I've tried that route and it's not been successful. So that's very frustrating. And I think it's frustrating for other citizens who've had the same experience have I with their representative who votes. So
Okay, thank you. I think that should put all of us on notice to pay attention to our constituents. Thank you.
Mayor, Ernie has his hands raised.
I'm sorry? What was that, Jeanette?
Ernie has a
Okay,
comment.
Ernie?
Good morning, Mayor. Thank you, Jeanette. Good morning, everyone. This may be stating the obvious, but Park Ridge has done everything it can do to try to alert residents along Granville that 9C, 27C is going to be opening November 5th, whether it be the Journal and Topics articles that we participated in, the Herald Advocate, Marnie Pike's article, as well as our own marketing piece that goes to residents called The Spokesman, as well as our airport commission face-to-face meeting with residents. We've tried to make it painfully obvious that this runway is going to open on November 5th. I just wanted to go on the record with that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ernie. Okay, is there any other comment either from the public or from the executive board or from our members who are not on the executive committee?
Yes, Mayor, Dan Dwyer. Just to wrap things up and what we can offer to moving the process forward is prior to the December meeting, regardless of whether there's a motion to reintroduce alternatives or not, we'd like to prepare some responses to some of the questions about alternatives F and G that rose out of the last meeting. And with the assistance, perhaps a meeting with Landon and Brown to make sure we're responding accurately. I think that's an opportunity that should be afforded any alternative. And we'd like to take advantage of that if the committee's amenable to it, and CDA as well.
Well, I think we've always encouraged these kinds of conversations among our members and committee members, so go at it.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else, Jeanette, do we have anything else to have on the agenda?
No, Mayor.
Okay, thank you all. We will hopefully all stay healthy, and Joe, I'll let you know if I will need to be out of town.
Okay.
With that, we'll be on a call Friday. Thank you.
All
We
right.
need a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
I
got-
will
need a
move so.
motion to adjourn. Okay, thank you, Dennis. Who seconded?
I'll second it. Joe
Thanks,
knows
Joe.
you.
Okay, let's take that vote, and I believe we've all participated, so let's just take the vote on adjournment.
Mayor Jurassic,
Yes.
Joe Nunzio,
Yes.
Dr. Cooper,
Yes.
Evan Summers,
Yes.
Dennis Ryan,
Yes.
Ryan Gazer, Superintendent Cassell, and Aaron Free.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Talk to you Friday.
Goodbye.
Peace.